Alrighty, welcome to Romera Records virtual cast. Today we have on Craig Van Slyke. How's it going?
Hey, it's going well.
Found you on Podmatch. I've been doing a lot of podcasts from Podmatch people lately, and everything's been great. Love having guests on from there. But you are a bit of a scholar, is what your what your bio says.
I'm sorry, say that again. You broke up there a second.
I was saying you're a bit of a scholar. You do learning and you do learning, teaching,
Yeah.
and basically you said you have a PhD. So what are some things that you do?
So I'm a college professor,
Okay.
um, have been for 20 something years now. So I spent 10 years in the computer and engineering industries and then decided to go back to school when I was fairly old, get my PhD, and graduated quite a while ago. And I've been at it ever since. So I teach information systems, which is computers in a business school.
Okay. Do they call that IS for short instead of like IT?
They do. Yeah, it goes by a lot of different names. IS, sometimes it's IT management, but that's exactly what it is.
Oh, okay. So, I don't know if you know this about me, but I actually went to Rockwell Automation and learned
Mm.
about PLCs and networking, Cisco switches, Stratix switches, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yeah, I'm a little familiar with all of that. Do you get to mess with that kind of equipment?
No, I deal more kind of on the business end of things. So back when I first got started in industry, I did a lot of computer aided drafting. I worked for one of the very first AutoCAD dealers and was at that for a while. But these days, it's more business and behavioral than it is technological. So
Oh,
kind of how do people use it? Why do people act the way they do with technology, that sort of thing.
oh, okay. Now that's probably been a big topic as of lately. I mean, a lot of things have been changing rapidly with technology, and it's really hard to keep up. I mean, if you buy something brand new today, it's out of date within a couple of years.
Yeah, that's the truth, and it's really been that way for a long time. You can tell I'm old, but when I started out, we had with my first computer. I recorded programs on a cassette tape, which
Nice.
in fact, I don't. I can turn my ceiling fan off if it's bothering you, but I would have to go out in the living room and turn the ceiling fan off in my parents' house to get it to load the software off of the cassette tape. And now we carry around a terabyte and something the size of your little finger. So it's been interesting to watch that progression of technology and especially how it becomes so central to everybody's life. It's just how do you do without it these days?
I've always said that people who are in like their, I would say 60s have probably had the most mind blowing experience of the world because you're not too old to enjoy like everything that has happened. And, you're young enough to have, seen all these things happen and then develop like I'm 29 and I still remember when my parents had like the really big phone and
Yeah,
like I think you had to like crank it up or something.
yeah, yeah.
I remember these things just at the age of 29, so I can't imagine people who are in their 60s that even how cars have changed, like all this
Oh yeah,
technology. It's probably been pretty crazy over
it
time.
has. It has been. My first car phone had to be installed in the trunk, and it cost. I think it cost about $6,500,
Oh my goodness.
and you paid by the minute. So it was, if you got on the phone when you were in your car, you got off of it as quickly as you could. So yeah, it's come a long way. But what's really interesting, having been in on the fairly early days of it, is it's changing at an accelerating pace. So it's just going faster and faster, and I wouldn't even predict what it's going to be like in 10 years.
I had a professor in college at Jacksonville State University, and he used to work for IBM. I cannot remember his name, but he in his class we were talking about how there's actually some formula. I'm not sure who the guy is.
Oh,
He has a formula for the rate at how technology increases over time.
right.
I was like,
More, yeah, Moore's law.
oh, okay.
And I'm not going to quote it precisely, but it's, technology, the number of circuits you can put on a chip doubles in every so many years. And it's a little more complicated than that, but that's a basic idea. So it's kind of this accelerating rate, largely been true.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it in, like, I'm a huge Apple lover, and Apple's products, like, you can just see the difference in, the nanometers of their chips, and going away
Mhm.
from the from Intel processors to the silicon processors that they have from, I think it's TSMC, who makes those silicon chips. But it's been wild,
Yeah.
it's completely disrupted the consumer base of how we consume technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea that you can carry around something as powerful as an iPhone or a good Android phone in your pocket is just mind blowing. Yeah, it really is sometimes just difficult to get your head around. Although I think it has some downside too, because we just get so tethered to our devices. It makes my wife crazy. We'll sit down and be sitting together in front of the TV, in the evening, and I'm just constantly on my phone, on Reddit, or checking Twitter, or doing, nothing really of any importance. But boy, it's like an adult pacifier in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, there's always pros and cons to everything.
Right.
Say too much of a good thing could be a bad thing. This our for consumer base, our access to not memory, access to, well, I guess memory is what I'm going along to, but the information and knowledge, it's, if you didn't know something, then it was just gone. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if you were having a conversation with your friends, and you were saying, "Oh man, remember that time, 10 years ago when we went so and so, and we did this and that," and then like, "I don't like I remember this part, but I remember that part." Well, nowadays we've got these phones and social media, and oh yeah, let me just pull that picture up,
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
and we don't have, they didn't have those things years ago, but now that we do, it's, it seems like a great thing. And then also, uh, for police and stuff like that, it makes it great for them to be able to crack down on investigations, and these are things that are helping us, become safer and have easier lives. But and then also, at the same time, people can use those things for bad. We have,
Right.
stalkers online and stuff like that. So it's good and bad.
Right. Right. Technology is, some people would argue with me about this, but technology is largely neutral at some level. And it's like you said, it's all about how somebody uses it. It can be good, used for good or for evil. So it's, and I mean, I'd hate to go back to living the way we lived before we had all of these things. It's nice to, oh, I don't know if you're trying to think of the name of a song. Well, I know a few words, I know a couple words in the lyrics. Let me type those in. Oh, it was by the Rolling Stones or whoever it was. We couldn't do that. We'd argue about it for an hour. Back in the day, and then somebody, 2 weeks later would look it up and come back and say, "See, I was right." And now it's just all at your fingertips. So we do have this just an amazing amount of information. Although sometimes I think we're over reliant on that. I see that sometimes in students where it's just, well, I can just look that up. Yeah, yeah, that's true. But do you want to have to stop and look everything up? Probably not. But who knows? Maybe they're right and I'm wrong.
Well, I mean, that's why I mistapped when I was talking about memory. It's because, it makes it to where we don't need this much memory.
Right.
We don't need that much RAM in our brains to where it's like, oh, I can just, look this up and I'm good. I don't have to, keep all that stored in my head. But,
Right.
as you said, I couldn't imagine, when I was in high school, everybody pretty much had like the Nokia phone, and uh,
Right.
very few people had iPhones, and a few people had Androids, and it just kept escalating from there. The Motorola Razor was big back then, but I can't imagine kids now with these such fingertip technology. It's absolutely easy for you to succeed, and I don't know how curriculum has changed, but you know back when like my parents, and they were probably in high school and college, and if you weren't at the library,
Yeah.
you were doomed.
No, it's amazing. I work with a lot of doctoral students, so a big part of my job is working with graduate students and doing research. Again, when I got my doctorate, I would make sure I had tons of money when I went to the library because I'd be copying, hundreds of pages out of some journal. And now it's like, what do you mean it's not on a I've got to wait for interlibrary loan to get this file for me. And it's like, I literally have not set foot in the library at my school
Oh wow.
because, there's not much need to. I can you get everything online. And, you miss some things because there's that, serendipitous searching that you might do if you're in the stacks and you find something you weren't really looking for, but it turns out to be useful. So you miss out on that. But it's a bit of a trade off, but it's just so much more efficient. It's really phenomenal to see how far we've come. But the thing I try to keep in mind is that the way it's come in the last 20 years, it's going to go 5 times as far in the next 20 years. It's just we just get better and better, and the technology, the chips get faster, and everything gets better. I mean, I just can't imagine being able to do what we're doing now. 20 years ago, you had to have a special room to do this.
And
You
it
know,
cost
comp-
a fortune.
yeah, yeah. I mean, one of my colleagues was at the University of Tampa. My doctorate's from University of South Florida, which is in Tampa, and they got a grant to put in this decision room. That had spreadsheets and all this other stuff in there. It was really cool. And today it'd be totally pointless because you could do it all, on your phone, really. And so, who knows what it's going to be like 20, 30 years from now. But it'll be interesting to watch.
What are some things that you've seen in technology that made, we're talking about all these great advances, but what are some technology things that you've seen that haven't advanced that you might be taken off guard by?
Huh, I'd have to think about that one a little bit. Um, I don't know. It's all progressed pretty rapidly. I mean, some things like in the home, my wife cooks in pretty much the same way my mother cooked.
Oh yeah, I mean that's true. Yeah,
I mean, my mother didn't have a microwave for a lot of the time, but that's only kind of cooking, I guess, is throwing something in the microwave. But you got out a recipe and fired up the stove and did whatever. I'm not a big cook, as you can tell, but I don't see how that's changed.
yeah. You pretty much just heat a pan and that's it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I know we have smart refrigerators now, but only kind of.
yeah, yeah,
You still go to the grocery store, you buy your stuff, and you put it in this box that keeps things cold.
yeah.
So that kind of thing, I haven't seen progress as much as I might have expected. So, maybe building materials, some things that are more. I mean, you're starting to see it now with 3D printers and nanotechnology,
Oh yeah.
where materials are getting smarter. But that's something that really hasn't gone very far.
The 3D printing has really, to me, kind of oddly peaked. I feel like there was a weird, not a weird, but like a big push. It was like everybody was in this weird state of where we thought it was just like, oh, 3D printing, boom. I actually feel like it's kind of similar to how cryptocurrency has been.
Yeah.
It was like it was a huge push, and then it just kind of stalemated for a while.
That's when I got into it. So I got into cryptocurrency, and that's when it kind of became unpopular, I guess. But that's the way it goes. But yeah, I can. I mean, I think that at some point we'll have the kind of Jetsons. Remember the cartoon Jetsons?
Yeah.
Where you order something and your 3D printer that sits in the corner prints it out and you have it right away. I mean,
Mm,
at some point we'll get there, but that's we tend to think of technology advancing in these smooth curves, but in reality, it's often like this. If you look at a lot of what we do with a phone, I mean, that started out to some extent with the Apple Newton
mm.
back in the 80s, which was really cool. I can remember one of my friends got one, and I thought it was just the coolest thing I'd ever seen. You had this screen and a stylus, and you could handwrite with it and tap, and it would translate your handwriting into something that looked like it was regular print.
Oh wow.
If you wanted to delete something, you'd scratch it out and tap the screen, and it would just be this puff of smoke, and it would disappear. I mean, it was really cool.
You said this
And
was.
then this was the Newton in I think it was the late 80s.
Oh my goodness.
Apple came out with that. And then it just kind of never went anywhere. It was too early.
Mm,
Um, Even back then, Hewlett Packard came out with the first laptop computer I'd ever seen.
mm,
And it was kind of a HP, I can't remember what it was, but it was kind of ahead of its time. So, you have these really innovative products that kind of start, but they don't quite get there.
mm,
And, sometimes there's a thing called convergence in technology where these different technologies have to come together to enable something. Like
mm.
if we didn't have fast networks, good graphics cards, fast processors, other things, we couldn't do what we're doing now. You take any one of those out, and all of a sudden this doesn't work anymore. And
Um,
so that's why I think you see these fits and starts if you really look back on it carefully.
that's similar to what happened. Well, Apple, I think it was Apple. Is either them or Microsoft? It might have been Microsoft actually. Took advantage of that because of the mouse. Uh,
Yeah,
Xerox, for everybody listening,
right,
Xerox invented the mouse, but everybody knows Xerox as a printing company. So
right.
a mouse didn't really make sense to them. And so I think they sold the license or they completely sold the patent to Microsoft. I'm not sure which one they sold, but Microsoft was like, oh, now we have a mouse.
Yeah, well, and the legend, I don't know whether this is really true, but the legend is that Steve Jobs was visiting Xerox's Palo Alto Research Center and saw what Xerox was doing with the graphical user interface and the mouse and that kind of thing, and it kind of inspired Jobs to rethink the way that we interacted with computers. It used to be that you typed everything in. You wanted to get the computer to do something, you had a command line interface, you typed it in, and it did it. Um, the first graphical user interface I saw was on an AT&T computer,
Oh, wow.
and that was a long time ago. But it was really cool. I'll never forget because I was working for a computer store at that time, and it was $7,000, and I probably made $20,000 a year. To give you some sense of scale. And one of our knuckleheaded employees spilled a Coke in it.
Oh my
And it was like, oh my God. Thankfully it wasn't me.
God.
But it was really cool. I mean, we never sold one of them, but it was really cool.
That's crazy. The ability for us to destroy.
Yeah, yeah, that was yeah, that was an unpleasant day, but
Well, I can't imagine how many times that's probably happened to some great inventors. They're
oh
just
sure.
messing around in a garage or something, putting stuff together and accidentally, you know, damaging something they've been working on for years. And who knows, we might have way more greater technology if people weren't spilling cokes on things.
Yeah, sneeze at a wrong time and a beer in the wrong place, and there goes. We're set back 20 years, but that's the way innovation works. It's you have all these things that just don't quite get there, but they plant the seed for something that comes along later. And you just see that over and over and over again, with all kinds of technologies. And that I think that's the way it's going to go forever. It's just it takes a lot of work and takes a little bit of luck and some good timing and things coming together for it to all kind of click. And so that's part of what makes it fun. Is that you hear from people that I can predict what the technology is going to landscape's going to be like in 10 years, and like, yeah, no, you can't. You're just hoping, if you're wrong, that everybody will forget by then. But it's one of the things I like about my career is I get to think about that kind of stuff and kind of watch it and study it. And it's been my life for a long time.
Something that I had heard was that as people get older, our creativity starts to go down. I think it's at like a certain age, you hit a not too much of a brick wall, but it just kind of rounds off. Like your ability to, I guess, think differently, be creative, just kind of rounds off. With somebody like you of your age, and probably have colleagues that are closer to your age, but you work with these college students who are probably, they're 20, 19 years old. Do you feel like people your age might still have some of that more creative juices than the younger people, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's generally true that younger people are going to have the energy to be creative. This is going to sound funny, but I don't have that much more time left to be wrong. If you're in your 20s, you can be wrong a lot and still be fine. You get to be. I'm in my early to mid 60s. You start to get to that age, and like, yeah, I don't have a lot of time to recover from any big failures. So you start to get more conservative, and yeah, it's almost kind of an inertia.
Mm.
You start getting bills, you have family responsibilities, and it makes it a little bit harder to be out there on the edge when you're young and you don't have those kind of responsibilities. Well, if you try something that doesn't work, you try something else. It's no fun, but it's not that big a deal. Although I would say that we're not destined to be stuck in the past when we get old. I started 3 podcasts after I turned 62.
Oh, wow.
Kind of 2 and a half. One is just a podcast for a textbook that I co-wrote, but I didn't know anything about any of this stuff when I got started. I just kind of like podcasts. Oh, maybe I should. And I have to learn audio editing, and you learn all the technology and that kind of thing. So you can still, even at a relatively old age, you can still keep yourself in a mindset where you don't mind trying things that are new, and you don't mind, if it doesn't go well. So, but all that aside, I think it probably is true that people tend to be more creative when they're younger. And I don't, other than inertia, I'm not sure I have a really good explanation as to why.
And as you said, when you're younger, you've got plenty of time to mess up. So you're not worried about, what if this isn't correct? What if this isn't
Right.
right? You just, oh, if it's wrong, I got time. I'll just do something else. And that has a lot to do with it, in my opinion. So I guess to follow along with the age thing, something that really, I think it kind of gets me excited is seeing really young kids. A lot of people might complain about them, like, oh, I give my 4-year-old the iPad and they're just on it all day. Well, I'm just in my head, I'm like, yo, a 4-year-old can use an iPad. Do you think that that's something that is is a great thing, or do you think that it could be a bad thing of just letting young kids play with these things all the time?
Well, I think it depends on what they're doing with them.
Yeah.
I mean, first, I think kids should be allowed to play.
Mm,
Um, this is going to make me sound old, but I think one of the mistakes that I saw, oh, I don't know, probably when people my age started having kids, is kids just got overscheduled.
mm,
There was soccer practice, there were music lessons, there was the tutor, and all this other stuff. When I was a kid, you went out and you played.
mm.
I mean, we didn't have any money for a lot of that stuff. You might have a baseball game on Saturday and maybe practice one night a week, but you mostly went out and played. And I think that's really important for kids' mental and social development to go out and have these unstructured times when they're just out there playing. They're making up games and getting into arguments about the rules and having to figure that kind of stuff out. And it builds a lot of capabilities that will serve them later on. Um, but you can also do some really cool things with technology that helps them develop mentally. And it depends if they're just sitting there watching the Little Mermaid or whatever kids are watching these days. Frozen, I think that's the big one.
Oh
My
yeah.
neighbor's kids like Frozen. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that made Christmas shopping for them the last couple of years really easy. Just anything Frozen was okay. If they're just watching that over and over again, maybe not, but it's something that a lot of people don't realize about especially about really young kids. They want to see the same thing over and over and over again because they want something familiar.
Mm,
When you're really young, everything is new.
yeah.
And so to have something that's just kind of all the same and what's going to happen next, and there's nothing that you have to kind of figure out is really comforting to
Mm,
young children. So even, watching Frozen or whatever over and over again isn't necessarily a bad thing. Um, I feel like I've kind of talked around your question,
no,
but
no.
it really, I guess the answer is it kind of depends. It's really cool that kids that age can interact with the technology,
Yeah.
which I think was your point. But it's like anything. Too much of it is a bad thing.
Yeah. I truly believe that, you know, as you were saying, it depends on what they're looking at. I think that we should be allowing our kids to just take advantage of this technology because they've got way more advanced stuff than even when I was that age. Like iPads and tablets weren't a thing when I was a kid. So for them to be able to have access to this technology, and I would say somewhat affordable, like in
Yeah.
today's economy, that it's not impossible for every household to have these things, but for them to be able to do these things, you'd be amazed at how you could train the kids to do other things, whether it's mathematics or science. You know, there's programs like Khan Academy where
Right.
kids can learn for free. You know, tons of information, and that kind of technology is irreplaceable. Like it's great that they have access to this kind of stuff at a young age.
Oh yeah. I mean the ability to learn virtually anything. I mean, I don't have you been into audio and this kind of thing for a long time?
It's been about, I think I started in like 2017. So yeah, it's been about 5 years.
So, when I was trying to figure all this out, I went online, right? I found a number of good resources and watched a ton of videos. And God, I can't imagine how much time I wasted listening to reviews of microphones and, this and that and the other. But you're right. I mean, I don't know how you would have done that 25 years ago.
Yeah.
You go out and hire somebody or you'd go rent time in a studio or, now if you have the drive and I guess the stubbornness, you can figure out just about anything
Mm.
online. And one of the really great things about that is that you don't have to be tied down to who you used to be.
Hmm.
So if you'll indulge me for a minute, my wife and I live with my mother-in-law. I guess we've got about 32 acres in it, literally in the middle of the woods in northern Louisiana. And we're completely surrounded by woods. We can't see another house. We have a couple of horses, a couple of goats, and when we got married, not all that long ago, I didn't have a yard.
Mm.
We were living in St. Louis. We met in St. Louis. I was living in the city, and I had no backyard. And now we've got all this land, and well, she wanted horses. Let's get horses. Well, how do you learn how to take care of horses? Well, you buy books, you go online, you join. I was on goat groups and on Facebook and all this other stuff, but you really couldn't have done that a couple of decades ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have gone down to the ag school and talked to some people and that kind of thing, but it just was, there was no really practical way to do it. And so even though, I was in my mid to late 50s when we got the horses, it's like, well, okay, so does that really matter? I can still learn this stuff. And so you're because of all the information and all the knowledge that we have available to us, you don't necessarily have to go get a college degree in something to pursue that thing. You can, if you're willing to put the effort in, you can learn it on your own.
That's that.
Thankfully, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, good.
You can say, thankfully for me, a lot of people aren't willing to put the effort in to figure it out on their own. So I still have a job, but
I was mentioning on Facebook one time. I posted and I said that I think college is going to be pretty much irrelevant in like 30 years. That was what I gave it. It was like 30 or 50 years. I can't remember what I said. And some people were like upset that I was said that, but my genuine intention on that was for people to be happy that they don't have to go through the system of college for years at a time. I think so. I actually currently go to I went to Jacksonville State University, got my bachelor's in business management, but I'm also going to Full Sail University. It's a university in Orlando, Florida,
yeah.
for music production. Well, I went for audio production, then now I'm going for music business. But I love their system. So right now I'm completely online, and it's 29 months of classes, and every class is only 1 month long. So you go 1 month of one class, and then you're done, and then you go to the next month, and that's what I think what I should have said in that post was traditional college will be relevant in 30 or 50 years, because I think what's going to happen is colleges are going to transition into like more like trade schools where you learn a craft or something very specific, and then that's it. It doesn't take 4 years. All these advancements in technology that we have allows us to condense how long it takes to learn something.
Well, it's an interesting question because I understand your point and don't necessarily disagree. By the way, I grew up in Orlando and taught at Central Florida, which is not all that far from where Full Sail started.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know they're really solid and they've done very well. But we're in this weird thing in higher ed where half of higher ed longs for the days where it was the children of the very privileged that went to college, to expand their minds and to learn how to become really well-rounded and people of the world and that kind of thing, kind of the liberal arts,
Hmm.
which is great. I mean, I'm a closet philosopher, so I love that kind of stuff. But then you have the rest of us who, yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have studied philosophy, but I needed to get a job,
Mm.
so I studied management. And so, you do have a significant portion, probably the majority of students today that at some level want to get some knowledge and a credential that will allow them to get a good job.
Yeah.
And, until we can figure out a better way to either put those two together or separate them, I think higher ed is going to continue to struggle. And we're higher ed is made up of people that don't like change.
Mm.
Even though they may be politically very liberal, this is the way I did it. This is the way we've always done it. This is the way we're going to keep doing it. It's just these. I know I used to talk about it being like this giant oil tanker. It's just going to keep going in the same direction unless you put a lot of energy
Mm.
into making it turn. And then it's going to take a long time for it to turn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what higher ed is. I mean, why? I mean, you mentioned this. Why do we have semesters or quarters? My school's on the quarter system, but why do we have these calendars? What, why take 4 classes at a time? It doesn't make a lot of sense.
No.
I mean, maybe if you said, okay, these 2 classes really need to go together because, one is going to help you with the other, but it's all pretty random. You go, well, you know how it was. If you were like most students, including me, you picked your classes according to who you thought was the easiest, and whether or not you could get them after 10 and before 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to have to go 5 days a week. It's really kind of random.
Yeah.
And we're just mired in this old way of doing things. You kind of hinted at something I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's on demand in universities. So when I was a kid, we listened to the music the DJ on the radio wanted us to listen to. Or if you could scrape some money together, you maybe could go buy the album, and then you were going to listen to the songs that were on that album pretty much in the order in which the producer wanted to put them on that album.
Yeah.
But I mean, I can still remember when I got actually an 8-track record, take albums and make a tape that was just the music I wanted to hear. And it was like the coolest thing ever. If you wanted to watch, Chips or something on TV, you had to be home at a certain time on a certain night.
Yeah.
We don't do any of that anymore. Most of our lives are on demand.
Yeah.
You've got a podcast. People don't listen to a podcast at a certain time. You listen to it when you want to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But higher ed, I mean, last quarter, I was teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8 to 10. And by God, if you want to hear this stuff, you better be in here from 8 to 10 on Tuesday and Thursday. And it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if it'll change anytime soon, but I think COVID might have pushed us a little bit in that direction, but, we'll see.
Yeah. I definitely think that, when the times change and we're able to adapt to just what's going on, it makes us really take a step back and go, what are we doing here? That's why I feel, I'm not sure how old Full Sail is or how long they've been going with the system that they use, but they're a newer school, so
Right.
they had the unfair advantage of starting later than every other big university and going, let's evaluate this. How come everybody else does classes like this, or how come they do that? Well, can't we just get our students in and make them do this and do that? And that's the great part about starting a company in today's age compared to in years ago. You have all this research and wisdom that you can gather, and plus everybody else has already done it before you, so
Yeah.
you've got the ability to see, like, okay, I can use my a lot of my professors will record video and then we just click a link, and that's how we talk to our
Yeah.
professors. So that kind of stuff is such an advantage in today's time.
Well, that's one reason I started the podcast for our textbook.
Mm.
It's, oh, they're all less than 10 minutes and they're the highlights of each chapter. And so, when I was teaching the class that went along with the textbook, it's, look, if you want to listen to this, great. If you don't want to listen to it, that's fine too. But look, you're going to be driving to school anyway, or you're going to be on the treadmill anyway. Why not just listen to this?
Yeah.
And if you do, it's going to help you on the test, and you're probably going to learn some stuff too that might be useful, because this technology stuff is kind of important in business and in your life. So it's a good idea to know something about it.
Yeah.
But it's this idea of on demand. They can listen to it whenever they want to listen to it. It doesn't matter to me if it's, I'm a morning person. I get up at 4 a.m. to feed the horses. So I do stuff at 4:30 in the morning. If they want to do it at 3:30 in the morning because they haven't gone to bed yet, what do I care? It's whatever works for them. But I'm a little bit pessimistic that universities are going to change anytime soon, because they're like any institution. The Catholic Church, the federal government. You kind of are in the business of keeping the power that you have when you're those institutions, and so it would be to do kind of what you were talking about, where it's just a clean sheet of paper design. Forget about what we've been doing for the past 700 years or whatever. If you were going to start this thing called a university today, what would it look like? And it would look different. I'm pretty sure it would look quite different than what we have today.
And the thing that I think also is different about Full Sail, maybe it's just because I'm online strictly, is the age group. Like you were talking about with your students, well, like people, your colleagues, and people in older times. If you were in college, you really wanted to be there.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's just like, oh, I'm just here because my parents told me to. Oh, I'm here because I didn't know what else to do, and I thought college would be fun. But back then, you didn't go unless you were already knew what you were doing. Like,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Well, when I was teaching at Central Florida, I taught quite a bit in a master's program, a part-time master's program, and I love those students. They were all older. It was all at night. They were rushing from work to get to class. I didn't give homework or busy work, any of that kind of stuff, because it's like, look, if you don't want to, I didn't take attendance. If you don't want to be here, you're not going to last anyway.
yeah,
Because you're giving up too much. You're giving up time with your family. You're giving up, bowling or going out to the clubs or whatever it is that you do for fun. You're giving all of that up years to get this degree. I don't have to motivate you.
yeah,
And I mean, I enjoy the younger students too. Even when I was a business school dean, I taught a freshman class. So I like the younger students too, but you have to motivate them. You don't want to be here just marking time, because you're going to graduate with debt and you're not going to be able to get a great job, or you're going to have a job you hate. And, so take advantage of this time. It's really, it can be one of the best times of your life. You have relatively few responsibilities. You've got no or very little of that inertia I was talking about earlier. You can do pretty much anything you want to do. And you don't get to do that so much after you get out in the quote unquote real world. It's a lot harder, at least.
Is there something that, well, I guess something else that you have used as far as technology wise to, I guess, encompass your work that you do? You were talking about doing the podcast for students. Is there something else? 'Cause that's very interesting. That was pretty cool that you said that. I wish that was around. I could just, if I missed a class, I could just play episode 84.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's become so much easier to do things like do a quick tutorial. Well, for example, I teach a class in business analytics,
Okay.
and this has a few graduate students in it, mostly undergraduate students, and the graduate students have to do a big, huge project. Well, when I was trying to give them feedback on their project, I was getting ready to type up notes and all this kind of thing. Well, this is just crazy. So I got on Loom, that you can do screen recording. I pulled up their project and I said, look, this part isn't that clear. This is really good. And I could move my cursor around and say, this part, these two colors are pretty close together. Or maybe you shouldn't have used this kind of chart, or, oh, this was really insightful. And I did video feedback and just emailed them a link and said, here's my feedback on your case study, on your big project. And it was actually not much more work, if any more work for me. And it had to be much better for them. I mean, you can imagine if you're trying to figure out, you've gotten written feedback and you're thinking, what is this guy talking about? I don't know what he's talking about. But if they've got their cursor and they say this part right here, well, now you know what they're talking about. So that's just one example. I'm a big believer in using what we call the learning management systems, where all the stuff is online, putting a lot out there that can really help students stay on track.
Hmm.
That a lot of resources that they can go out and find. It could be my own tutorial on how to do something, or if I find something on YouTube that's better than what I can do, link out to YouTube. So it's not necessarily anything really high tech. It's just a link. But I think it really helps the students out quite a bit.
Yeah, that's one thing that I love so much is YouTube University. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
the ability to just look up stuff on YouTube is so fantastic, and for teachers, like you could have a whole class where if you're teaching one subject, you could probably find tons of videos on YouTube just
Yeah.
show your class, during a class, and that's such a great thing because I think the way that people my age and younger digest videos, we can learn better that way, and
Right.
we learn quicker, and it enables us to just understand the information and then keep going and be able to develop better skills with this type of learning.
Well, and you have flexibility with that kind of a resource that you may not have with a lecture. I'm sure you've been sitting in a class and either you're making a note or you zone out for a second and it's like, oh crap, what did they just say?
Yeah.
And then you're lost. Well, if you're watching a video and you zone out for a second, you move it back, 30 seconds or a minute and listen to it again.
Yeah.
If you don't quite get it, maybe you're really paying attention, but it didn't sink in, you watch it again. I'll tell you a dirty little secret though. A lot of professors learn stuff through YouTube. If I get some question on software that I don't quite know how to do what they're asking me, I go out on YouTube.
Mm.
How do I do this? And so, it's a resource that's out there. Students can do the same thing.
So I know we've been talking a lot about school, but let's get out of the classroom.
Okay.
What are some things that you, I guess, just seen in the world that make you excited about the way technology is going?
I think the fact that it's almost limitless.
Mm.
In the course of my career, my involvement with technology, I've heard over and over predictions of things computers would never do. They'd never be able to beat a grandmaster at chess.
Oh yeah.
They'd never be able to accurately translate languages, and just thing after thing after thing. I can't believe we're close to autonomous vehicles, and the drones and the current unfortunate Ukraine war. I, I mean, that's some sci-fi stuff. If you've watched any of the videos of these drones, and so it's just, I mean, that's a very negative example, but I mean, the idea of instruments of war, but it's just whatever you can imagine, it's probably achievable. I mean, I don't know when, but I can see the whole Star Trek, what do they call it, the transporter or whatever it was when they, blip from one place to another.
Mhm.
I don't know if we'll see it in my lifetime, but we could in your lifetime. And so it's just whatever you can imagine. And it just gets better and better and better constantly. I mean, the computer that I have at my house just has these, and it's not anything that's, highly expensive, but it's just got these resources that would have been beyond imagination when I started with all of this. And so I like to kind of project out. I've seen all this go on over the last 40 years, and it accelerates at an accelerating pace. So what's it going to be like in another 20 years? Who knows? Um, and it's the other thing that's interesting is that it touches so many aspects of our lives. So it's entertainment, it's work. I mean, it is just the coolest thing to be able to pull up a movie, on Netflix. I mean, it was cool enough when you could go to Blockbuster, but now,
That's
yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, I can remember when it's like, my God, you can really do this. We have, we've got like 200 episodes of Bob's Burgers on our DVR. If I want to watch something, I pull up Bob's Burgers or, whatever it is that I want to watch. And it's just phenomenal, but that's just entertainment. Work is completely transformed. The way that we do our work is completely different than it was not all that long ago. And now vehicles. I had to drive to Austin for a conference, and we were required to rent a car by the university. And I'm driving. It was a really nice, it's a Mazda RX-9, I think, something like that. I'm driving it along. It's a nice car. I change lanes, and all of a sudden, a lot more current on automotive technology than I am. It was the anti-collision system.
mm.
The car didn't like that, or my car didn't like that I probably slid in a little bit too close to the car in front of me. And so it put the brakes on. I mean, that's pretty wild stuff when
Yeah.
you think about what's required to do that technology wise. Sensors and computers that are, okay, how far away are they? What's the right action to take? How much should we slow the car down? Is there another car behind us where maybe we want to slow down quite so quickly? I mean, all this stuff is going on in the blink of an eye. And I know my internet here is, I've got Starlink, because we can't get anything
Oh,
wired here in the woods. It's phenomenal. I mean, there's this thing on the roof that moves around and follows satellites and bounces this beam off of a satellite and goes to some kind of a ground station, does all kinds of cool stuff. And I actually have real internet now. I mean, it's just really wild. I mean, maybe it doesn't seem that way to other people, but it does to me. And so, medically, I've got Apple Watch. I love seeing what my pulse rate is. Tracking your activity, all that kind of stuff, health wise. I mean, how long is it going to be before we have little micro pills or whatever that go in us that are constantly monitoring our glucose levels and our electrolyte levels and everything else. And, it's just whatever it is, whatever you can imagine, it's going to happen at some point. So sorry, I get a little overexcited when I think about some of this stuff because it's just, it's so cool.
No, I love it. Like, I love just thinking about all these types of things because it excites me too, because I love new technology, because all it means is that life is going to get easier, and the things that we're able to do. I love accomplishing things. I like getting stuff
Mhm.
done. So
Right.
so that's what technology does for us. There's a guy on YouTube I watch. His name is Max Tech. Well, that's the channel is called Max Tech, but he was talking. He does a lot of comparison videos when Apple comes out with new products, and Apple came out. I think it was about 2 years ago. They came out with the Mac Pro, and it was
Right.
like it's a tower Apple computer. Well, if you spec that thing out to close to what their new computer, the Mac Studio, is, the Mac Pro would cost about $16,000.
Yeah.
The Mac Studio that they just came out with the very similar specs costs like $4,000, $4 or $5,000. That is mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's a third of the price.
Yeah.
You get just as good technology, and that's in 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. When I teach our introductory class, I show a picture of my first portable computer, which was an Osborne,
Hmm.
called an Osborne computer, weighed 25 pounds. It had either 8 or 16 kilobytes of RAM, kilobytes.
Oh,
I remember my brother got one and then I got one, and he was mad because I got the double density disk drives that would store 220 kilobytes on a floppy disk.
oh my goodness.
And they were, I don't know, they were $3,000 or $4,000 at a time when, if you graduated and got a pretty good job, you were probably making 20.
Oh my God.
So, it's just crazy. And now, you go out and you can pick up a really top notch laptop for, what, $1,000.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so it's just, it's going to keep pushing forward. But I have a question for you. Do you see any downsides to this?
To the acceleration of the technology,
Well, and the technology just being more and more embedded in our lives.
I think the downside, as far as us just using it all the time, is the dependability, as what we were talking about earlier. Like, we're just going to rely on it for everything, and we're not really going to use our brains. I even see it with it's not really technology, but it's how we use it. Supplements and just fitness. I see all these like strap waist belts, and it's like, oh yeah, just put this on and it shakes your body and boom, you're gonna lose weight. And it's like, no, just go walking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or just do this. And that's the downside, because humans are like electricity. We're going to take the path of least resistance.
Right.
So if we don't have to go running, we're not. We're going to take this pill that some pharmacy company made up, and we're going to drink this drink that somebody said will make us lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. So as far as downside, that's what I see, because if we have a chance to be lazy, we're going to be lazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I see this a little bit more with students than I used to, kind of a learned helplessness, which is really weird, because you'd think you have all of these learning resources at your fingertips. So you could go out and learn a lot of this stuff on your own.
Yeah.
But for many of them, their first, if they don't get it right in their first couple of attempts, they just give up.
Hmm.
And I don't know whether it's me getting old or cranky, but I really do see this more. Well, it's what's, how do you do this? So, when the time you're waiting for me to respond to this email, you could have gone out on Google. And what worries me about that is the most important thing you can learn in college is how to learn.
Yeah.
And with the rapidly changing world and the even more rapidly changing future world, man, if you can't learn how to learn, you're at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah. I really like that thought, because I here's a human development shift that I think we're about to hit with the decrease in attendance in college, means an increase in hiring with less education and more so the ability to learn and experience. That's
Yeah.
something that I personally am looking forward to because I am really good at, all right, this is a thing, learn it and do it. I mean, that's how the military was. Like,
Right.
I was in the Air Force, and I loaded bombs. Like, I was aircraft armament systems in Minot, North Dakota. I loaded conventional and nuclear bombs on the B-52. That it was a cool experience, but I learned how to do that in 4 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with the advancement of technology, I think we're if you don't know how to learn quickly, then you're going to get left behind as a human being.
Right.
And I think that is going to be what companies shift toward in the future is, can you learn quickly? You know, can we just take you off the streets, give you these sheets of paper and just do well? You know, I see it. I
Yeah.
actually work for Owens Corning, the shingle manufacturer,
Right.
as
Right.
automation technician. So as I said, I deal with PLCs and everything. And I see it in that career field, and also um, just in the employees. Like, we fire a lot of people and have to hire a lot of people, and to be able to do that, these people need to learn quickly how to do their
Right.
job, and let's keep going. You know, the beat don't stop. So
Right.
that's something that I truly see is going to happen in the workforce.
Well, yeah, I think that I would agree with you on that. And even if you get outside of the world of work, just to really function effectively as a human, a change the world, you need to be able to figure stuff out,
Yeah.
and not, I mean, that's the downside of Google. You Google, how do I do this? Well, what if it's something that somebody hasn't made a video about? It's been an interesting experience moving here to Louisiana. I grew up in Orlando, in a pretty, it was kind of a rednecky part of Orlando, which, I don't mean that in any pejorative way, but I had forgotten how much country folk can just figure stuff out. So there's one other house that's kind of through a stand of trees back in the same section of forest that we're in. Really nice family that lives there. And if I've got some problem, it's, hey man, I got this problem. You got any ideas? Well, you could try this.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great idea. 'Cause I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so, but they don't, and I'm sure it's not limited to just country folks, but country folks, you got some scrap wood and something you need to do, you figure out how to do it with what you got.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes the more privileged among us, don't quite have those same skills for adaptability. And yeah, I don't want to go back to education too much, but I think that's something that's missing in education today is these fuzzy problems that don't have standard answers.
Yeah.
I can understand it, but it just makes it crazy when I say, well, what's the right answer? I don't know. There isn't a right answer. Nobody knows what the right answer is. When you'll know what the right answer is? 6 months after you've done whatever it is that you were doing. You're not going to know right away. So, the whole world isn't an algebra problem.
Mm.
And I don't know. I wonder if technology doing so much for us kind of gets us out of that mode of figuring things out for ourselves. But, what do I know?
Well, Craig, I'm gonna have to end this. It's been great. I could
Yeah.
talk about this kind of stuff for forever.
Yeah.
If you could just tell everybody, if do you have any books or anything? Have you?
I do. I've got a book of essays that I wrote called On Leadership and Life that's available. And, we've got one called Cyber, where a colleague and I interview information security researchers, and try to help them translate what they found into something that security professionals can use. And then my personal podcast is called Live Well and Flourish. So it's you can go to livewelandflourish.com, and that's all about how to live an excellent life by taking control over your life, not letting just life happen to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all the splendid information that you gave us, and being able to just talk about, the advancements of how technology, where it could go, and where it's came from. I'm sure that your students have been able to learn a great amount from you. But again, thank you so much for doing this.
But thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank for everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.